video about adding text-to-speech to Google Slides so that you could have your slides read to you out loud. And as a bonus, I came up with a method for being able to control the slideshow and reading using a single switch. Recently, I tried my own method and discovered, much to my disappointment, that it doesn't work, and probably also to the annoyance of the 250 some or 450 some people that had viewed my video. So, um, I sought about finding an alternate method and found one that worked. The previous method used a Google extension that's really quite good called Read and Write, but somewhere along the line, either the browser changed or slides changed or Read and Write changed and it stopped working. So, let's go to the slideshow, the revised version, and I'm going to ask the question, can you use text-to-speech to read Google Slides? And the answer is yes, even while presenting your slideshow. The former method didn't work in while presenting the slideshow, but it did work when you were in a view called full screen, which is close to being in the slideshow. But this is actually in the slideshow. I'm going to press the Alt key and tap R on the keyboard and...
Can you use text-to-speech to read Google Slides? Yes, even while presenting your slideshow.
Okay, so how did I do that? I used an extension called Read Aloud. What's nice about Read Aloud is that you can activate it using a keyboard combo, and that it works while presenting the slideshow. The one drawback about it is that it didn't do the nice word-by-word highlighting, and another drawback is that it throws up a pop-up over your slideshow while it's reading. But it does go away as soon as the text-to-speech reading concludes. So the second part of the slideshow was, can you adapt it so that you can use, can you adapt it for a single switch user? And the answer is yes. So what do you need for switch accessibility? You'll need a switch, a capable switch interface like the ATEC, which is available commercially for less than $100. Maybe you can find a QuizWorks for under $30 on eBay. You could also use a Bluetooth switch interface like the Praetorian applicator. And you will need a utility. It's called SwitchWedge for Windows, and it's needed to make the Alt R happen, and also maybe the click required to advance a slideshow. So SwitchWedge is a utility that listens for events that the switch interface is sending to the computer. When it hears one of these events that I call a trigger, it replaces it with a click or keyboard combos or both that you can define. And you can follow the link, which will be in the description, to get SwitchWedge. And when you get it, you download it, unzip it, you'll find a folder and inside the folder is the contents for the SwitchWedge application. It'll run right away. There's no installation. You do need to keep everything in that folder for it to work properly, but you can move the folder wherever you want to. Okay, so the details about using Read Aloud and text-to-speech in Google Slides. I'm not gonna read this. I'm just gonna do it. The first thing I'm gonna do is click my mouse, and that advances to the next slide. And the next thing I do is I'm going to press Alt-R like we did before.
Here's how you can make Read Aloud read slides with a single switch on a Windows computer.
And you can see that it's reading the text. Okay, so I'm going to get out of the presentation mode, and let's take a look at Switch Wedge. I've already, it's been downloaded. It's on my desktop. I'm going to double click the folder. Here it is. I'm going to open Switch Wedge, and you'll see it's a little window that sits on top of everything. When it starts up, it's in the off condition because this box was checked. And that's important because switch wedges, as you can see, there are this row of menus here called triggers. Most of them, 3 of them are set to none, but 2 of them are set to 1 and 2. And that means if I pressed 1 or 2 on the keyboard, they would get replaced with whatever's in this row here that's defined for each one of these columns. Okay, so let's make a little sense of that. Let's go back to my slideshow for a second. And so for a single switch user, we would want to send a sequence that starts with click and ends with Alt-R. And I've got that here on my instructions here on the third item. At the end of that item, there's this string of characters. There's bold, and I'll copy it. And I'm going to paste it in this text box here that says enter your custom sequence here. And I'm going to assign that so that when I press 1 on the keyboard, or if you press the switch plugged into your switch interface that sent 1, it's going to send this sequence. And you do that by clicking this button that says set sequence 3. And you can see there was a slight change here. But that's set up for now for a single switch user. So let's try it. So I'm going to turn switch wedge on. You do that by pressing the tilde and back tick key, which is right below the escape key on most keyboards. You get a notification. You can press enter to dismiss the notification. It also hides switch wedge in the system tray. Let's go to the slideshow view. Okay, so now when I press 1 on the keyboard, the first thing that'll happen is
it brought up the next slide and made your slide talk.
It brought up
How
the
did
next
it do
slide,
that?
and it made the slideshow talk. And you just heard my explanation of how that happens. Okay, so, but the question is, what about a 2-switch user? So again, it's really pretty much the same process. Some switch interfaces will have a place you can plug in a switch and set it so that it will send a click, so you don't really need to program switch wedge to send a click. But in this case, I'm going to do that. So in this situation for a 2-switch user, I'm going to use 1 to change the slide. So, and we can do that more easily than having to type anything in the text box by just selecting click from a drop-down menu. And for 2, we're going to have to enter the key sequence for Alt-R. And as far as switch wedge is concerned, if I type the exclamation point, that represents the Alt key, and then I'll press R. And those 2 together are the equivalent of telling switch key to send Alt-R to my computer. So I'm going to set the second column to Alt-R. It was already done because I rehearsed this before. Switch wedge is still on. I'm just going to minimize it in that case. Let's go to slideshow view and watch it happen. So I'm going to press 1 on the keyboard. That'll advance to the next slide. And then I'll press 2, and that'll start reading.
Switch wedge in a nutshell. Status: switch wedge is off.
Okay, so this slide just has an overview of how to use switch wedge. That hopefully you don't have to go reading through the complete help file. Right now I don't have a video on how to use switch wedge, Maybe I'll do that. It's kind of a complex program, but it's definitely worth a look for a situation like this. And it can also do other things. Um, Most notably, switch wedge can be used to effect complete control of the mouse cursor, both directions and different kinds of mouse clicks, including click, double click, right click, and drag. And you can do hotspot scanning, which is a method where you hover the cursor over, you record a bunch of hotspots on a screen, and then when the user activates it by pressing their switch, the cursor will move in a sequence over the various hotspots. And when they press the switch a second time, it will send a click to the hotspot where the cursor is hovering. Okay, so that covers the revised method for adding text to speech to Google Slides and how do you make it switch accessible. Thanks for watching.